In 1929, Joe Kennedy believed that the stock market was becoming too popular for its own good, and that the uninformed speculation of millions of common investors would lead to a rapid collapse and the cratering of the stock market. Many people believe that a big wave is coming, and that when it hits, it's going to wash thousands of investors out to sea and eliminate the value of everyone's portfolios in vintage collectibles. Is this really a Shoeshine Boy moment in the vintage trading card market? And if so, what can you do about it, or what should you do to prepare? Let's discuss right now. Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Parkside Merchant channel. I want to start today's video with a story. This is a story that I think a lot of folks have heard over the years. It's a very familiar tale. But basically, a long time ago, during the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, as they're often described, Joe Kennedy, who was the father of JFK, a very famous U.S. president, was very successful in the stock market, right? Joe Kennedy had a really good run in the 1920s, made a lot of money, was a very wealthy guy. The Kennedys were a very wealthy family from the 1920s. And allegedly, in 1929, in the summer, he was getting his shoes shined somewhere, and the Shoeshine Boy allegedly told him a couple of stock tips, basically tried to give him advice about the stock market. And allegedly, again, I don't know the extent to which this tale is verified, but Joe Kennedy was shocked that the boy, the Shoeshine Boy, was giving him stock tips, and that this kid was actively involved in the market. And for I guess from his perspective, right, a very elitist, very wealthy dude from the wealthy New England region or whatever, was like, whoa, I gotta exit the market, because he thought there were too many common folk, right, out there in the stock market just making random picks, and it scared him. So not only did he sell off his entire position, but he also shorted the market and made a ton of money off of the market crash, the infamous, right, stock market crash that marked the end of the 1920s decade. So the reason I bring up this episode, which is commonly referred to in business and in economics as the Shoeshine Boy moment, or the Shoeshine Boy inflection point, there's a lot of different labels people use for it, but it's a very well-known and very commonly referenced episode in history that not only is characteristic of the financial and investment savviness of the Kennedy family from that time period, but it's also a useful descriptor in any market to talk a bit about a potential inflection point or a point of reckoning when people need to think about making an exit. So why do I bring up this unusual historical example in reference to the vintage trading card market, you may ask? Well, there are a lot of people out there right now who believe that in the vintage trading card market, any of these categories, whether it's sports cards, whether it's Magic the Gathering, or it's Pokemon, Yugioh, whatever it is, there's a lot of folks that think that during the pandemic, a lot of people got involved in the market. A lot of folks that might be characterized by some as dumb money, right? People that don't really know a lot about what they're trading. They don't really know a lot about the market. They don't even really care about the cards or the stuff that they own. They're just looking to flip stuff for a quick profit. And there's a lot of concern that not only are there a lot of people involved in the market that don't really care about it and are just making uneducated speculative bets, but there's also loads of people that have submitted their cards to PSA in what's commonly referred to as the big wave of submissions that went in during the pandemic over the past 6 to 9 months, that once they return to the market, once these cards get back into the supply, that there's going to be a massive influx of all these cards. Everyone's values are going to fall to the floor, and everyone's going to just be out of money and very sad and very upset. So what does this mean for Yugioh specifically, you might ask? In my personal opinion, I feel like a lot of the parallels that you see between 1929 and the trading card market don't actually apply very much to the Yugioh category for several reasons. First and foremost, a lot of the speculation And a lot of the buying that's happening right now is still sports card centric. So if there is a big bubble out there, and if there is a lot of uninformed, dumb money sort of investments happening, I feel like a lot of it is sports cards driven. It's people that are buying modern sports cards, they're grading modern stuff, they're just throwing money at things that ultimately didn't really have a lot of value in the first place because they weren't very rare. And they're just throwing money at sports because sports is something that everybody is familiar with. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, much smaller market niche. And by the time you make your way to Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, you've probably already done a lot of the speculation and stuff in the sports cards market. So I feel like sports is where it's really gonna, if there is a bubble out there, and if there is dumb money getting tossed around, it's probably sports centric. I'm not personally terribly worried about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because, while I do think there may be a lot of speculation happening, a lot of the dollars right now are getting funneled into stuff that's just not valuable at all in the first place. So it's things like maximum gold, it's things like modern cards that are getting shipped out to PSA, unlimited, right? Lots of modern product. In my view, when you think about the big wave that's about to come back from PSA, it's not like this big wave is going to be a whole bunch of mint LOB first edition cards. It's not going to be mint Metal Raiders. It's not even going to be mint stuff from the first 11 sets. The vast majority of the things that are going to come back from people's COVID closet raids that they've done on their old collections, it's going to be PSA 5 through PSA 8 probably for the most part. It's going to be a lot of stuff that's not really all that vintage because there's a lot of people that are submitting things from 2008, 2010, 2013, and so on. So I feel like when the big wave of the returns come back, it's not like you're going to see the pop reports for some of the really staple stuff, these OG secrets and supers and ultras from the first 11 sets. People don't have droves of this stuff just sitting around anymore. And if they do, it's not in Gem Mint 10 condition. It's probably like, okay, maybe it's an 8, maybe it's a 9, but we're not going to see some kind of sudden influx of volume that's going to just cause all the valuations to go to the floor. It's still going to be really hard to buy a PSA 10 first edition Dark Magician Girl, right, from Magician's Force. That's not going to be an easy card to find. It's always going to be something that you got to hunt for. Same with all the other like really popular secrets and ultras from those first 11 sets. So I have almost absolutely no fear of like the valuations falling to the floor because there's going to be some sudden influx of cards that people submitted during COVID. Because the vast majority of the stuff people are submitting during COVID, number one, it's not even Yu-Gi-Oh! In the first place. It's sports cards, it's modern sports cards especially. And if people make their way to Yu-Gi-Oh!, they've already spent in probably all their Pokemon and all their sports cards. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still sort of an afterthought for a lot of people. And in my view, I think that in combination with the fact that a lot of people are submitting junk, like cards that are not going to grade a 10 or an 8 or even a 9, and the fact that they're submitting unlimiteds and they're submitting modern stuff, all that stuff sort of amounts to me to a situation where I don't really feel like my personal position or portfolio in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really all that at risk because I stick to vintage, I stick to first edition, and I always try to buy stuff that's at least a PSA 8, 9, or 10 because I know that at the very least that has a competitive moat around it. So in conclusion, I don't really think that we're in a Shoeshine Boy moment here, at least for vintage Yu-Gi-Oh! Sure, maybe there's some speculation around that. I've already talked in other videos about why I don't think the willingness to pay for things like the LOB First Edition Blue Eyes is ever going to decline. So bottom line, has the Yu-Gi-Oh! Market become too popular for its own good? Are we in a Shoeshine Boy moment? I think the answer is probably yes if you're throwing a lot of money at unlimited stuff, modern cards, maximum gold, all that stuff. That's probably a Shoeshine Boy moment, in my opinion. When all those Blue Eyes and Dark Magicians come back for maximum gold, nobody's going to want to buy that stuff. Everyone's going to be trying to unload it. But I don't think for vintage, first edition, especially mint or near mint condition cards, you're not going to see a whole bunch of that stuff just flood the market from these PSA returns. And I don't think the speculation is actually all that crazy in light of just how scarce some of these cards are and just how wealthy some of the investors are that are getting into the vintage Yu-Gi-Oh! Space. So all that said, folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you disagreed with or if you think my take is incorrect. Once again, this is the Parkside Merchant Channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.